What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another weekly update. So, sorry I missed last week, and thank you guys so much for all of your constructive feedback 2 weeks ago on that weekly update where I was discussing, making some possible changes to the weekly update in order to help, with the views and also with the subscriber loss that I was seeing with the weekly updates. And so, it seems like the consensus is obviously most of you don't want to see them change or go away. And I never wanted to quit them altogether. I just was trying to find some other way to package it or something. And so I think the consensus, what I'm going to try for now is I'm going to try cutting them down. Now this one I'm catching up on 2 weeks worth of news. This one's going to be a little bit longer, but I'm generally going to try and target these videos to be 15 to 20 minutes long instead of 30 minutes on average like they usually are. I think that'll maybe make it a little bit easier for some of you to tune in, and it's a little less discouraging for non-subscribers who see a 30-minute video versus a 15 to 20 minute. It's a little more, easy to manage, and so I get that. I'm super busy too, and seeing a 30-minute video oftentimes makes it just go into my watch later playlist instead of actually clicking on and watching. So totally get that. So I'm going to try and make them shorter, and then if that doesn't really help, I will continue on with the weekly updates, even if it doesn't improve with the situation. Then I will probably just eventually get rid of the spy photos or do way less of the spy photos to cut out that cost if need be. But I'm going to keep the spy photos for now because I think they do add a cool element to these weekly updates, and I like to keep doing them. But again, that's something that would be the next step, if things don't improve here in the next few weeks. But I'm excited still. I think the more enthusiast focused format of the weekly updates here will be really cool. I'm going to try and still touch on most of the stuff in the car world, and maybe the less exciting stuff will just be a little bit briefer, but that's kind of how I'm gonna go about this. But let me know again your thoughts on how everything is here in the comments for this weekly update, and especially next week and the weeks going forward there once I really do get it down to that 15 to 20 minute mark. But anyway, lots of exciting news this week and last week as well. So first off, Ford has revealed the official horsepower numbers for the Shelby GT500. So it's going to officially do finally 760 horsepower and 625 pound-feet of torque. It's been, basically 5 months we've been waiting for that horsepower number, and now 760, which is good. I think the torque's a little low in my opinion, just when you consider that a Hellcat Red Eye has, 70, 80 more pound-feet of torque and still more horsepower than, the GT500 here. But, Ford seems to be confident that it's going to handle better than Challenger Red Eye around the track. Now, the Challenger Red Eye isn't a joke around the track. I know everyone loves making jokes about Challengers, but they do handle really well with that wide body package of the 305 wide tires and stuff. But I'm sure the Shelby will probably handle better with its carbon fiber wheels you can get and all that type of stuff. So that's probably going to be their advantage. We'll have to see, as far as 0 to 60 times, they've still been very vague with just low 3 seconds, kind of being the estimates or whatever. So we'll have to see. But anyway, exciting to hear that horsepower number. For some more solid news here, Porsche has revealed all the specs here and the official images of the 2020 718 Cayman GT4 and 718 Spyder. Interestingly, they dropped the Boxster name for the Spyder, so it's just 718 Spyder. But anyway, they both have the same mechanicals, so I'm going to just kind of clump them both together since there's really nothing unique aside from, again, the coupe and the rear wing on the Cayman. Otherwise, they're basically the same. So anyway, the best news here is they both run a naturally aspirated 4-liter flat 6 engine, and so it's not a detuned GT3 911 engine like we originally thought it was going to be, though. Porsche says this is actually a new engine and is actually more similar to the new 911's 992 turbo engine, but it just has the turbos removed, and it's obviously been refined and retuned to not be running on turbos. And so that's kind of, I guess, the way they're packaging this engine, how they want you to think about it. It is totally new. It's not a GT3 engine, not even close. But it does do very impressive numbers still. 414 horsepower, 309 pound-feet of torque, has a redline still of 8,000 RPMs. Now that is 1,000 less than the GT3 motor, so still not as insane as that that motor. But again, that is the top dog. They want to keep it the top dog, so I guess we should have expected them to not have that full-blown engine here in these vehicles. But still, at 8,000 redline is awesome. Other things that are awesome is that it is manual transmission only. There is no PDK available. You can't get it. You get a manual, and the manual has an auto rev match function if you want it, but you can disable it as well if you'd like with a push of a button if you don't want the help. Both of these vehicles will do 0 to 60 in 4.2 seconds, and again, that doesn't sound super impressive because you're used to PDK times with all the other Porsches. This, you only have the manual, and it's all about the launch and everything, so 4.2 is what they are quoting here. The Cayman has a top speed that's 1 mile per hour higher than the Spyder's at 188 miles per hour. It's a 187 for the Spyder. Beyond the engine here, the whole suspension is different, with the cars being 1.18 inches lower, having the same front axle and brakes actually as the 911 GT3. So it does get some GT3 parts, just not the engine. It also runs 20-inch wheels with 245 wide tires up front and 395s in the rear. And the tires they're running are Michelin Sport Cup 2 tires. So, I mean, very grippy tires. Inside, there's plenty of Alcantara, as you would expect. The shifter is actually 0.39 inches shorter than normal, they said, for slightly faster shifts and, I guess, comfort or whatever. Also, air conditioning and infotainment are included and free, but you can, I think, get those removed, as you see in those pictures. And they do, have a focus on keeping these vehicles very light, although they didn't specify any curb weights yet for these. So we're still waiting for actual weight figures, but, obviously it's probably going to be lighter, hopefully, than the other normal Cayman and Boxster. Another thing to make the Spyder version lighter is that it loses the power folding convertible top, so it's a manual folding top now, which is fine, and so that's cool. Otherwise, deliveries are starting spring of 2020 with prices starting at $97,550 for the Spyder and $100,450 for the Cayman GT4 version. And they didn't say there was any limited production, at least they didn't announce that yet. I'm sure they're not going to be building 10,000 of them, but hopefully there's a decent amount so that the markups and stuff are reasonable and not insane. But only time will tell with that. Even though they weren't super limited, the previous Cayman GT4s were still really tough to get and very expensive beyond the MSRP. So we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, fantastic vehicles nonetheless. Bentley has revealed the all-new 2020 Flying Spur here this week, and it's absolutely gorgeous in my opinion. Very beautiful looking. It now uses the same platform as the new Continental GT and the Porsche Panamera, but has been stretched so that its wheelbase is 5.1 inches longer than the old Flying Spurs. It runs a nearly identical engine to the old car, though, continuing on with that 6-liter W12 engine that still does 626 horsepower like before, but the torque has improved by almost 60 to 664 pound-feet. It's connected to an 8-speed dual clutch, which is interesting. They went for a dual clutch in a luxury car like this. You would think they would want to have a normal automatic so it's smooth in traffic, but hopefully this dual clutch is super refined, maybe like the Porsche's PDK, so that you don't feel any kind of abruptness. Other stuff though, the extra torque and the new transmission really help with the acceleration, because a 0 to 60 time for this thing is 3.7 seconds for this massive barge of a luxury sedan. 3.7 seconds is just insane. 207 mile per hour top speed as well, also insane. There's lots of other cool features here on the new Flying Spur. One of the main highlights is the Flying Bee hood ornament now pops up and retracts like a Rolls-Royce hood ornament, and that's a very cool little feature there. It also gets the same 3-sided rotating screen inside as the Continental GT, and so you can have either the touchscreen, or it'll rotate to just 3 basic gauges, or just rotate again to just a nice piece of wood there if you want to disconnect from the infotainment. And that's cool that it has that. It also has 4-wheel steering to improve the massive turning radius it probably has, so that probably helps a lot and gives it better high-speed stability as well. And the all-wheel drive system can now send all of the power to the rear wheels. Before, I think the most it would do would be a 50-50 split, but now it can do full-on rear-wheel drive. Now, I don't think there's a mode for that. I think it still is based on conditions and stuff, but still seems to be a little bit sportier in its setup, which is very cool too. Ordering opens for these this fall with deliveries starting early next year, and there's no pricing yet for these, but with a vehicle like this, if you have to ask, you probably can't afford it. And so anyway, interesting to see that. BMW has also revealed the 8 Series Gran Coupe this week, and it comes in either rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, and the current trims starting off here are the 840i, and it goes up to the M850i. Power numbers are the same as the actual coupe version, as far as power and stuff like that. It's also important to note the 840i is the only one that's available with rear-wheel drive, unfortunately, I believe. The M850i, you're forced into the all-wheel drive. But anyway, 0 to 60 is 4.9 seconds for that rear-wheel drive 6-cylinder version, and then it goes down to 4.6 if you go for all-wheel drive with the 6-cylinder. And then, of course, the fastest version with the V8 is a 3.7 seconds 0 to 60. So very quick again for a nice large sedan. And we also do know that the M8 Gran Coupe is coming, and that's going to be even faster, of course. It's 9 inches longer than the Coupe. It's 2.2 inches taller and 1.2 inches wider for the rear track. And there was some mention about how their production line actually had to be changed slightly to accommodate the wider back end of this vehicle. They said supposedly it's the widest back end ever on a BMW, just because that rear track has been stretched out there. They also tried to keep the weight down with aluminum doors, hood, and roof, as well as making the deck lid out of plastic. I'm sure it's some type of advanced plastic, and so that it doesn't feel super cheap, hopefully. But then the M850i still weighs 4,758 pounds. The rear-wheel drive 840i is lighter at 4,262 for its weight. But, so, I mean, that's not too bad, but still, not super light or anything. The interior is all basically the same as the regular 8 Series. No surprises really there. And anyway, it's going to be on sale in September with pricing starting at $85,985 for the cheapest 840i. And then the M850i starts off at $109,895. And so, anyway, cool to see that. And there's a few other BMW stories here this week. First is that the Australian website Car Sales interviewed the boss of BMW's M division, who told them, "We are investigating M variants that may also be standalone that don't have a predecessor." So this is, bringing up rumors again of like an M1 supercar coming back, or some type of, totally separate model not based on a current normal road car from BMW. But there's another source of theirs that says that this whole thing is in a very early phase of discussion, and they say that they're currently considering several different body styles and several different powertrains. So we'll have to see, what they end up doing with that. And so there is a separate thing, although it might be related, but there's a BMW sports car that seems a little bit further along here, because we just got some official teaser images here this week of what's called the Vision M Next concept that supposedly they were going to be showing next week. That hasn't been confirmed, but that's the rumor. And so they teased it with these artistic paper images. They're not actually photographs. These are just like artwork done by some person. And so it's supposedly depicting the rear quarter panel area, and it seems to have a similar floating pillar design like you see on the i8. So the rumors here are that this is the next gen version of the i8 that they're teasing here. It's just a concept, so it's clearly not going to be ready for production for a few years. But something like this is what we're going to be seeing. And it's also, according to BMW, along with the teaser images, they did say a few things about this. They said it's going to be showing how intelligent technologies will fuel sporty driving, and that the person at the wheel will be turned into the ultimate driver. That sounds interesting, unless they're going to be doing some type of autonomous driving thing with this. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but maybe that's what they're hinting at, maybe possibly for racetrack driving, having autonomous features or something. We'll have to see. But anyway, interesting. We'll have to see how that develops. The last little bit of BMW news here is that the 3 Series Wagon was revealed this week for the rest of the world, of course. We don't get it anymore. And it looks good. It's going to be available in September for basically everywhere other than the Americas. Yeah, no surprises there, but cool to see that. Another cool car that we don't get here in the States is the the Alpine A110, and now there's an even faster A110S version that just debuted. It gets an extra 40 horsepower, a sportier suspension setup, and wider wheels and tires. It's still very light. These things only weigh 2,456 pounds, so I mean that is several hundred pounds lighter than a BRZ or something. Super light, very impressive, close to the Miata weight, I think, actually. And so yeah, just too bad we don't get that one either. Aston Martin this week has officially confirmed that their new supercar beneath the Valkyrie that was previously called the AMRB 003, that was shown, I believe, at the Geneva Motor Show a few months ago, that now is going to officially be called the Valhalla. And that's a very nice name. I like the V names they're going with here for all these Aston Martins. They really sound great, and I'm so glad they're doing that, an actual name instead of some, alphabet soup name or something. So that's great. They also announced that it's going to be one of the Aston Martins that's going to be used in the new James Bond movie coming out next year. And it's going to be that. It's also going to have the Aston Martin V8 Vantage from the 80s. It was in the Timothy Dalton movie, and then also the Aston Martin DB5 is coming back as well. So that's cool. I was still hoping to see the DB10 make a return, or the Vantage or something, because I really liked how that looked in Spectre and stuff. But anyway, it's just a shame also because they're only making 500 of these Valhallas, so it's not going to be quite as easy to pretend to be James Bond here for next year than it is currently. So anyway, but very cool to see that new name. Another hypercar that was teased this week was Toyota's GR Super Sport, which was already announced last year, but now it's just announced it's going to be competing in the hypercar class of the 2020 World Endurance Championship. And that's all racing stuff that I don't usually get into. But for a car to compete in that racing series, the manufacturer is required to have a street legal version and build at least 20 of those street legal versions. So that means it's going to force Toyota to actually build a hypercar for the street. Now, as far as how many they're actually going to build or what engine it will use, if it's going to basically be the same as the race car with turn signals or not, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see how that all pans out. But that's awesome. And there was talks of Toyota saying they want to have 3 sports cars, and this could be the third if you consider the 86, the Supra, and now this. Maybe there'll be something else. There's rumors of other stuff being worked on. Who knows? But if nothing else, Toyota's going to be making a hypercar, which is just insane. Basically, we haven't had anything like this since the Lexus LFA. So awesome to see that. It's still a few years away from, actually arriving. But anyway, awesome nonetheless. Kia this week has revealed Korean versions of the Cadenza and the new Seltos SUV, but they didn't provide any details, and we don't have any details for our market either. So I'm just going to briefly, glaze over this. The new Cadenza they call the K7 in Korea, and it looks very awesome though. I love that concave grille, especially, and the headlights and everything just looks so good. But even the back end looks very cool. There's like a dotted line there for that tail lamp area, which is a unique thing. I think Kia is really one of the most creative with LED lighting stuff recently, and I really like the way that looks. The interior is also very impressive. Looks almost as nice as the K900, which I just did a review. I filmed a review. I will be posting that next week. Cool to see that. The Seltos, we don't have any interior shots or any mechanical details or anything at all, so there will be some type of US reveal we'll be seeing, I'm sure, soon, but at least you get a look at it here, and that also looks pretty good, for a crossover. I think that's actually one of the more handsome ones out there currently, so cool to see those. Mercedes has revealed their new crossover, the 2020 GLB as well, and it's also pretty attractive, but it's only 1.5 inches shorter than a GLC, which makes me think that this is too much overlap with the GLC. I'm not sure why they're so close in size. The only difference really here is that you can get an optional tiny third row if you'd like here in this GLB, which is something you can't get in the GLC, which is strange since the GLC is larger. That makes no sense to me. But anyway, so that's one thing that's kind of cool, to kind of give it a little bit of separation here, but it still just seems strange to have them be so close in size. Anyway, the interior is now, the typical but very impressive setup that we see in the very similar A-Class and others. It runs the same powertrain as the CLA and the A-Class basically too, with that 2-liter turbo engine that does 221 horsepower, 258 pound-feet of torque, and it all runs through an 8-speed dual clutch with either front-wheel drive or a front-biased all-wheel drive system. I think they said the most rearward torque you can get is like 30% to the rear or something, so it'll still be heavily favoring the front So that is one thing. The GLC, I think, is a little more sporty in its setup. So that's another differentiation, I guess. But there will be AMG versions of the GLB as well, and hopefully those will kind of give us a more exciting all-wheel drive setup maybe. But anyway, these basic ones are going to be on sale by the end of the year, but we don't have any pricing yet for those. The Mercedes GLA was also spied the next-gen version as well this week, and that'll probably be revealed before the end of the year too. And like we expected, it's basically just a lifted version of the A-Class hatchback that the rest of the world gets. But it should be pretty popular if it's a decent amount cheaper than that new GLB. Again, it's a really crowded little space there of, mid $30,000 to mid $40,000. You only have about 10 grand of wiggle room between 3 different vehicles. It's kind of tough. And we have a couple of rumors this week that were just too interesting to skip. I just had to cover them here. So first comes from Japan's Best Car magazine, and they're pretty famous for having some fairly far-fetched stories, but they have had a few things. Like, they supposedly were the first ones to discover that Mazda was making an inline-six engine and a few other things. And this is actually related to that discovery because and that's what makes this seem a little more credible. We'll have to see. But anyway, they claim that the straight-six engine that Mazda is working on for their cars will also be used in Toyota and Lexus models. And I mean, this makes sense because Mazda is a small car company and they can't afford, I don't think, to develop a lot of new stuff. That's why they run a 6-speed automatic transmission that's fairly ancient, and they don't have a ton of variation with a lot of their engines and stuff like that. So this seems conceivable to me that that's something they would do. But anyway, the magazine claims that Mazda will first use the engine in a Mazda 6 successor coming in 2022. But then that's when Toyota is going to start getting it in their vehicle, supposedly. From there, Toyota is going to get it as their new replacement for the Japanese market Mark X sedan, which they have, which I think is the Cressida previously. So there's going to be some replacement for that. That's also going to get this engine. But then for some more relatable stuff here for us in America. From there, it's going to go into a couple of Lexus models. So this inline-six will first go in the next-gen RC Coupe, that is going to be getting this engine supposedly in 2022 for its all-new version. And then the new IS is supposed to come out next year, and that's going to be running a V6 supposedly and be on the TNGA platform and stuff. But at some point down the road, the IS will also get this straight 6, maybe for a mid-cycle refresh, or maybe just be a short gen and they'll just switch it over in 5 years or something. We'll have to see, but that's also, I guess, lined up to get this engine. On top of that, they also claim some more juicy stuff here, that Lexus will also launch a new car to fit between the RC and the LC. But it sounds like it's going to be some type of 4-door coupe instead, because they say it would compete with the Audi A7. So maybe Lexus wants their version of the Kia Stinger or something. I'm not sure. And then that could use a straight 6 as well. We'll have to wait and see. But if all that turns out to be true, that'll make for a very exciting few years here between Mazda and Toyota. And they do already have a technical partnership, so there is a groundwork laid for them to potentially do some type of partnership like this. As far as whether they would actually, Mazda would get any of these vehicles or anything remains to be seen. But anyway, another crazy rumor here comes from Bloomberg, and they're reporting that GM is considering bringing back Hummer, but only as an electric brand. So, I'm not sure, if the Hummer demographic of buyers would be interested in an EV, but I think basically GM wants a competitor to Jeep. Just Jeep is on fire right now, and everyone wants a piece of the action. That's why Ford's rushing the Bronco out, and everyone else wants in on that type of stuff. So I think, they want to bring Hummer back to be a Jeep competitor. And I guess part of that is just like, well, we're just making everything electric in the 2020s anyway, so let's just make it an EV brand. But I don't know. I feel like they could probably just bring Hummer back and just use the truck platforms they already have. Maybe do some type of dedicated off-road thing to compete with the Wrangler. But otherwise, I could see a Hummer brand doing well again, as long as they aren't gargantuan beasts like they used to be, and have some type of decent fuel economy. But anyway, we'll have to see. Bloomberg did ask the GM executive Mark Russ about it, and he said, "I love Hummer. I don't know. We're looking at everything." so not much info there, but but yeah, we'll have to see. But 2020 could be a pretty crazy time with vehicles here. We have obviously a lot of electrification coming, but also sounds like, we got an inline-six coming that could be powering a bunch of sweet stuff, and maybe Hummer coming back. Who knows? Crazy. Other GM news here, though, is the next-gen Cadillac Escalade and the Chevy Tahoe were spied again, but this time we get a look at the Escalade's interior. That's the main new thing. And what we can see here is it takes some inspiration from the Lincoln Navigator in that center stack area for sure. Otherwise, though, both of them are pretty well covered up, so it's hard to make out too many details, but they both look pretty production ready, with, lots of chrome in the grills and finished headlights and taillights and stuff. So we shouldn't have too much longer to wait for the official reveal for those. The big news for those is going to be that, they're switching to an independent rear suspension for better ride quality and better interior space and stuff. But we'll have to wait, for more info whenever those come out. Nissan was also spy testing the 2021 Rogue this past week, and it's even more covered up than most prototypes are, so it's hard to see too much, but we can kind of see that the V-motion grille that they have on everything these days is most likely going to make an appearance there, and also has a blockier shape than the more streamlined Rogue we have currently, and it also seems to be a little bit larger than the current Rogue as well, with that the rear quarter windows there being a little bit longer than they are in the current Rogue. It also appears to have a split headlight setup, which means it's joining the bandwagon with the whole Hyundai range as well as the Chevy Blazer and the older Jeep Cherokees and all that kind of stuff. So sounds like Nissan's jumping on that bandwagon too, and I guess it's a popular thing, so whatever, but it doesn't seem too exciting otherwise from, again, what we can see here so far. Toyota was also spied testing the new Tundra again, but this time the spy photographer said that it was silent up until about 25 to 30 miles per hour, and then it kicked on the engine there, and so this gives us a lot of proof that this is going to be a hybrid version, or at least there's going to be a hybrid version offered at some point, and that'll most likely be designed to dramatically improve the fuel economy ratings, which currently are abysmal in the Tundra because it uses an ancient V8. And so whether it's paired up with either the naturally aspirated V6 like you see in the LS500H, or if it uses the twin turbo V6 with a hybrid component, which is like the LS500's normal engine, but then just putting the hybrid with that, maybe that's what they'll do. We'll have to see, but anyway, these new Tundras are rumored to be revealed next year, and so anyway, interesting to hear that. And thanks to Brian Williams for all those spy photos as well. Awesome to get all of that. But the last story this week is also some spy photos, but these ones come from viewer Al in Michigan, who just happened to spy this European next gen, or the new gen version of the Ford Focus that we don't get here in the States. This hatchback version that was spied running around Michigan with these manufacturer plates, which means Ford is officially driving around the new Focus here, and it looks to be an ST version running around in the States. And I can't think of a single good reason for why they would have this in the States, unless they were considering backpedaling on their stance with the Focus, and at least with the Focus ST, and maybe making an exception and bringing the Focus ST here to the States again, bringing it back. I'm hoping that's what this is suggesting with the presence of this vehicle in the States, but we'll have to wait and see. That would be a very, very nice thing if they did that, I think, and I think the Ford community would be very happy about that. But we'll have to wait and see. I mean, I would love to see them backpedal, because I think it would be great to have, not only the ST versions, but even the regular Focus. It's a very nice vehicle from what we've seen in pictures, and I think it would be a very competitive offering here still in the States. So we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, huge thanks again to him for sending those in. But yes, that's it for all the news this week, guys. Let me know your thoughts on all this in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.